Okay, so I quickly want to make a quick mention of this in case you did not hear, and I don't want to cover it too long since I technically already made a video on it, but just in case you didn't see that video and you're only watching the episode review, just to give you an FYI, the finale of Made in Abyss is apparently going to be 60 minutes long, so you have something to look forward to. Anyways, but that being said, this episode, just to give some clarification, is mostly anime original. And there is two reasons for this, and I'm going to be completely honest with all of you, because I don't want to lie to you. I have actually finally read ahead for Made in Abyss. I couldn't hold out any longer, and I finally read ahead and saw for myself what I was to expect from this series, because it's been on that teeter-totter constantly where I'm like, do I want to read ahead? Do I want to read ahead? No, should I wait and stay in anime only? And it was always this back and forth thing inside my mind while watching this series, and I finally gave in to my weakness and I read ahead. So when I was watching this episode, I felt like I forgot some things. I'm like, wait, did this really happen? I was thinking to myself, like, am I forgetting things when I was watching this episode? I was like, no, there's just no way. I read this very recently, so there's just no way. So after thinking about it, rereading the chapters already read, and then looking to what people were already mentioning to me in the comments section on Twitter and all that, I'm like, oh, okay, so this episode was mostly anime original. Now, I know many anime-onlys, or even manga readers, that have a cause for concern and be like, whoa, anime original? That's not good. Like, that's what many people would think. That's the first thought you would have in your mind, because anime original usually means, or indicates, that the story is going to go off track, and it's going to have, like, an anime original ending, or it's going to ruin the content of the main series, and so many start to freak out, which is understandable, because this has happened with a lot of series in the past. However, when it comes to Made in Abyss, I will say that this anime original content was actually needed. It was definitely a needed point for the anime, and let me explain. The reason why is because in the third layer in the manga, I read pretty far ahead. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. But in the third layer in the manga, the third layer was very short. It really didn't have a lot of chapters focusing on it. There wasn't a whole lot of content about it, and it felt very fast-paced. And the entirety of the manga feels very fast-paced from what I read. Yes, I even read the actual first part again and all that, you know, what the anime already covered. I read all of it just to see the comparisons and stuff. For the most part, the anime has done a splendid job with actually adapting the content from the manga, so I have no problems with the anime. I'm just gonna say right now, the anime is it's good. It's perfect. It's doing a really good anime adaptation, so I have no problems with it. But when it comes to the manga, one of the big flaws is that sometimes it can be very fast-paced, and a lot of the layers don't get a lot of spotlight or focus, so you don't get to see a lot of the journey with the characters when they're going from layer to layer. And in this case, I was very happy with how the anime added in this anime original stuff throughout the episode. And apparently, from what I am hearing, I could be wrong here, so don't quote me, but from what I am hearing is that most of the content that was in this episode was actually what the writer of Made in Abyss wanted to add into his manga, but he wasn't able to because he had to, you know, make it fast-paced. He had to get things done quicker. For instance, you know, a lot of mangaka, when they're starting off and all that, you know they have to get a big audience. They have to gain an audience, and so they're going to throw out many ideas. They're going to have the fast pace. They're going to try to get to the main interesting good stuff of their story before they slow it down and then start developing stuff. And that's kind of how Made in Abyss was, apparently. Apparently, the writer was rushed to kind of get past this and get to the really, really good stuff, and so that is what he wanted to add in the first place, but he never had time to. So the content of the anime episode, like the latest one that just came out, was stuff that was supposed to be in the manga, but it wasn't able to be there because of pacing issues and how the writer was just forced to rush. Very similar to how, you know, The Promised Neverland was, or how any series that starts, Boku no Hero. You remember how I mentioned this when The Promised Neverland started, or Boku no Hero started, that when a series first begins, the writer has to worry about getting an audience, and if they're not getting an audience, they're gonna have to, you know, probably cancel their series. Their series is gonna get completely axed. So many writers throw out so many ideas to make sure something sticks, and then people will stick around. And like I said, that example is applied to this part of the series. So this anime original stuff could only have been done thanks to the popularity of Made in Abyss, and how it's now become a stable series in manga, and how the anime, I'm assuming, is doing very well. Anyways, though, let's talk about the actual anime original content. So, about up to the ship is, like, as soon as we get to the ship, that's when the anime original content begins. Now, the ship was in the manga, from what I remember, but when it comes to the content of when Reg uses his, like, laser and all that, to when he knocks out, to when, you know, Rico's having to carry him through the tunnels and stuff, and then eventually you have that fight with the split jaw at the end, to, you know, the stomach when, you know, Rico and Reg fall inside the stomach of that creature, all of that stuff is basically anime original, and you're probably thinking, like, holy shit, like, really? That was anime original? Yeah, it was, and it was really good content. It actually meshed very well with the main content of this series, which once again reinforces the fact that this was supposed to be there in the first place. So what was the point of the anime original content? For this to be added, what was the purpose of it? What point was it to be added? Like, why was this added now, and why was it skipped? One of the big things I get from this anime original content of Made in Abyss is that it actually focuses on what would happen if Rico was by herself for 2 hours if Reg was unconscious, or a what if Rico was by herself and had no one to rely on at all. What would happen to her? That's kind of what the anime original content was for, because as we know in the training course when Osen was, you know, teaching Rico and Reg, it was stated that what would happen to a girl at her age that was thrown into, like, you know, the abyss by herself, and you were unconscious for like 2 hours, Reg, like, how would she be able to fight and stand up and win against anything that comes at her? How would she survive? And that's kind of what the episode is trying to show. Her flaws, her weaknesses, and her strengths, and how would she fare if Reg was not there. It's clear as day after watching the anime original content of this episode that there is just no way in hell Rico would have made it as far as she has if it wasn't for Reg. If Reg was not there to support her, be someone that can actually help her and be the strength for the team, she would have died probably on the second or first layer. It would not have been a possibility. Who's to say she might have gotten caught on the first layer? That could have been a thing. So when you look at it like that, this episode goes to show how dangerous the journey was. If it wasn't for both of them working together, neither of them might have made it to this point of the abyss. Now, we know Reg apparently has crawled from the bottom of the abyss up to the top and all that, but we gotta remember, he has forgotten everything. He doesn't have his memory anymore, so it's clear as day that he probably can't do that again at the moment, because he just doesn't have that knowledge or whatever. So this puts in perspective that, thanks to their teamwork, they have made it this far. It goes for both characters, and so I like this episode for the original content, just to show their relationship and how they have made it. So let's talk about Rico for a second, since majority of the episode was actually spent focusing on her since it was anime original. Rico, as a character, we know where her flaws and where her strengths are. She is clearly someone that is intelligent. She's like the brains of the group. She's able to figure out what needs to be done. But at the same time, though, she has shown sides of her, especially in this episode, to where she could be troublesome. She is someone that doesn't always think before she acts. I mean, her strength is her mind. Her strength is knowing a lot about the abyss. But at the same time, though, she doesn't always think about what she needs to do first. For example, let's talk about when Reg went unconscious. When they fell down the hole and all that, and Reg went unconscious, he's like, please stay here in the spot until I'll wake up. Now, obviously, as soon as he passed out, Rico's basically in control. She can do whatever she wants, regardless of however Reg feels, because he's unconscious for 2 hours. And the thing is he said, please stay still, please stay here, because, you know, it's dangerous if you start walking around or whatever, something might find you and try to kill you, which makes a lot of sense, especially from what we've seen already from the episode prior to that event, and also from the Abyss too. And so, it makes sense that you should stay still. However, this is the big thing that happened with Rico. She was getting hungry. She was exhausted and getting hungry, and so she continued to press forward because she was hungry. And so, I can understand that her desires for food probably drove her to continue to press forward, but at the same time, it was a very dangerous move. She should have probably sat down, probably tried to capture one of those creatures around her and then eat them. Now, just to be fair here, she obviously ate some of those creatures towards the end of the episode when they were cooking, but she could have probably have caught one of those creatures and tried to eat it right there, instead of wandering off and getting into even more trouble. So, she obviously loves to do things before she thinks. She doesn't think before she acts. And when she was wandering, she eventually wound up following the smell because she was so hungry, and she fell into a stomach of a creature. And if it wasn't for sheer luck, the fact that this creature wasn't aggressive like the others we've seen, it was very passive, and you weren't able to cut out of it and all that, she would have been dead. Like, if she was not able to cut out of that, or if it was an aggressive creature, she would have died. But thanks to the creature not being like normal creatures of the abyss, she was actually lucked out quite a bit. And you can probably assume the reason why the creature was so passive in a way was because it was a little bit further out from the center of the abyss. As we found out from the second lair and Osun's teachings and all that, the further away you get from the abyss's, center, the easier it is. For instance, the effects of the curse isn't there as much, but also the creatures are more passive than how they would be towards the center. And so I'm assuming since the creature was a little bit in the darkness, it was a little bit further away from the big shaft that goes straight down, I'm assuming that that's why the creature wasn't so aggressive. It makes sense. However, Riko got very lucky. It was sheer luck to why she was able to get out of that, and she did something very foolish, pressing on forward. Now, there could be reasons for why she did this. Number one example is food. Hunger. Desire to eat. Understandable. People do crazy things when they're hungry, and they have that overcoming their well-being. Understandable. However, we gotta remember what was revealed in the recent episodes. Riko was revealed to be a walking corpse. She's basically a corpse. A reanimated corpse walking around. And as we know from what we've seen and was told by Osun, is that she was crawling towards the abyss as soon as she came out of that relic. So what's to say the reason why she didn't stop moving was because of that impulse in her, that desire to go down in the abyss and keep going down and down. That could have been what drove her to press forward, was because of that desire. She couldn't control it, which is what put her in that situation. That could be what the writer was trying to imply there, that even though she knows it was probably foolish, she couldn't stop herself because of what the relic did to her and how she was reanimated into like this walking corpse. That could be the reason for it. Anyways, let's talk about the ascension, when she was climbing up a hill, and what happened when the curse of the third lair hit her. Now, one of the big things that Made in Abyss has been doing very well, especially after reading the manga and all that, is showcasing how just trying to climb upstairs or going up any portions in the abyss, like climbing up a hill or whatever, it has such a massive impact on what could possibly happen in the series. Because if you try to climb in any way in the abyss, the effects of the lair, the curse of the abyss, will strike at you. And I mean, if you're on the first layer, you get like a headache or whatever. Second layer, you get a headache and nausea. And then in the third layer, you get nausea, headache, and also you will, have hallucinations. You won't be able to know where you're at. You'll be seeing shit, and you will feel like you're probably drunk or something. That's basically what it looks like. The third layer is the equivalence of being drunk, but also having hallucinations, like you're on some heavy drugs or something. And so Riko's she had to climb to get like to the next point, and the curse of the abyss striked at her. And if you haven't noticed, we have been seeing the curse of the abyss every single layer. And since that part of the episode was actually anime original, we never really got to see this in the manga. You never really got to see how severe the third layer was, what it would do to a person. And I was very happy to see that. I was very happy to see how the anime original content showed what would happen if Riko was trying to go up the abyss. It just shows how heavy of a burden it is if you try to climb out of the abyss. Just imagine this, okay? This is the third layer. Once you get to the fourth layer, you start bleeding out of every pore in your body, and then with the fifth layer, you can mentally go fucking ham. Like, you can go crazy, basically. And if you go into the sixth layer, it's loss of humanity or death, so that's really GG right there. And I'm assuming the seventh layer and on, there's just no coming back. There's no coming back once you're that far down. So when you look at it, I like how we've slowly been getting a glance at what would happen if someone made it to like the fifth layer and tried to climb out. This is what all of the divers had to do to get out of the abyss. What Osun had to do to get out of the abyss. What, Riko's mother had to do to get out of the abyss. This is what all of the white whistles, the black whistles, moon whistles, all of them have had to do to go back up to the surface world once again. They've had to go through all this hell. And just imagine this, okay? Picture this in your mind. The big shaft, the big tube, okay, that they're going down and all that. Imagine having to go back up that. Just imagine how much of a burden that would be going up that big-ass shaft in the third layer. That would be hell. It would be legit hell. Climbing up those tunnels, all that, and hallucinating, it would be horrible. It would be very, 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 very bad. So that just shows how dangerous it is, and that the further and further Rico goes down and Reg goes down, there's just no turning back. They're not probably coming back ever again. It's not a possibility. Either they're gonna die on their way down to the bottom, or they're gonna reach the bottom and realize they can never go back up ever again. There's just no point of return. And so I do like how that scene was done, just showing the burden of that and all that, and hallucinations, and what Rico was seeing. That was a very sad moment too. Like, oh my god, when she, came out of the abyss and she saw the talent, she was shocked. But then eventually, after things just started not to add up, she's like, where's Reg and all that? And then her hallucination just started to corrupt or whatever, and then she woke up. It just shows what the abyss can do to someone if you're by yourself. I mean, imagine if she was by herself trying to climb the abyss. That's even more hell. So good stuff. Very good stuff. Anyways, let's talk about the pickaxe. Okay, so the pickaxe scene at the end, I know many might kind of ask, why didn't Rico use the pickaxe? But we gotta remember what Osen said to Rico when she gave her that pickaxe that used to be Rico's mother's. We gotta remember that apparently the pickaxe was jankety. It was something that didn't work properly. It's like faulty, it can misfire or whatever. And so someone like Rico that isn't physically strong carrying something like this and trying to use it, it would probably harm her. It'll probably harm her more than harm whoever she's trying to aim it at. So it makes sense why she wouldn't use it in the first place and why she gave it to Reg, since he's very durable and able to take a lot more damage than what Rico's able to deal with. I mean, even if you look at the scene, you see how Reg, he was kind of like blown away or whatever when he was hit by the impact of it. So it does show that you cannot just use this pickaxe willy-nilly and think it's not going to harm the individual trying to use it. It just really goes to show how strong Rico's mother must have been to be able to use something like that and deal with all the problems it had. So, anyways, let's talk about miscellaneous stuff before I end this video. The ship. The ship is very fascinating, and it's something that really caught my interest when I even saw this in the manga. It makes you wonder, how did a ship get stuck in a third layer like that? That really makes you wonder, what the hell happened to get a ship that far down? Because it's really deep underground. But how did the ship get that deep underground? And how did the ship, get stuck in the wall like it's petrified or something? It just makes no sense the way it's done. So I'm very, very curious on the history of the Abyss and kind of what happened to all these things that's happened in the Abyss, like the ruins and stuff. I mean, when we go to the first layer, we see people in prayer and all that, and they were rituals or burial grounds. It makes you wonder what has happened to these different layers, and how did stuff like these ruins get down there? Like, how did the ship get stuck in the middle of the wall on the third layer? I mean, it's understandable if, it used to be covered in water and it fell down and all that into this hole, but it still doesn't make any sense for the ship to be, in the middle of a wall like it's petrified. It makes no sense. So, how'd that happen? Other little details of the episode, I especially love the music of this episode, especially the adventurous music when Rico's going on her own and all that, she's trying to find food or whatever. I like the music. I really, really appreciate the music of Made in Abyss. It gives a whole new life to the series, and I really want that soundtrack. Another detail, the little fluff ball. The little fluffy fluff ball. Very cute little creature. I have to say, those things are adorable as hell. And I know many are probably going to have a problem with this episode, especially when it comes to Rico's character, throwing them out in the middle of the big hole and watching them get eaten. I know many are going to be like, what the fuck? That's messed up. But you got to remember something, okay? This is the Abyss. It's like survival of the fittest. That's what the big thing was about the recent episode. Survival of the fittest. You have to do what you have to do to survive. And that's basically what this is trying to show. That these little fluff balls are probably on the bottom of the food chain. They're definitely not as strong as everything else. And so they need to use these things to be able to survive. So when Rico's throwing them out as live bait, she was able to crawl down to another hole to be able to survive. So I know many are going to have a problem with that, but at the same time, it makes sense in terms of what the story's actual tone is about and what they're really trying to do. Because this isn't really no kids game, and this ain't no kids show, obviously, from what we have seen from the details of, Made in Abyss. So when you look at it like that, I know people are probably going to have a problem with it, but at the same time, it needed to be done. I mean, they need to eat to survive, they need to do whatever they need to do to survive, and so throwing them out the hole and all that, it makes sense. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I love you all so much. Please be safe. Chibi out.